chemical imbalance. So this is a phrase that I first heard maybe 30 years ago when the first person I knew started taking an SSRI, Prozac Nation, Elizabeth Wurtzel. It was this whole like Time magazine promoted idea that depression, mental illness of all kinds was caused by a, quote, chemical imbalance in the brain. And the question I always had is, well, okay, if something's in imbalance, what's balance? Is there a baseline? Is there a way to measure various chemicals in your brain? Do we know what the right levels of those chemicals is? I mean, I don't is there any science behind that at all?
No.
It's a chemical imbalance in your brain. Okay. So like if I'm low on oil, I throw the dipstick at the top of the engine. I'm like, oh shit, it's 2 inches down. I got to pour another quart in. Is there anything like that with psychiatric assessment?
Nothing.
No. Okay.
Nothing. And you are one of the lucky few who somehow miraculously saw right through it, because most people to this day, despite the fact that the chemical imbalance theory has long been debunked, and there was an umbrella review published in Molecular Psychiatry 2 years ago that just kind of put the final nail in the coffin on it. It has never been proven, and that's been known all along. And yet, if you survey in surveys that have been done of Americans, most people believe that mental illness, that depression, all these things are caused by chemical imbalances to this day.
That's utterly fake.
Utterly fake.
Because we can't define balance, therefore we can't define imbalance. Correct?
Exactly. And even if, this medicalized framework that we use to think about ourselves, which has such a monopoly on how we make sense of what it means to be human now. I mean, suffering, anxiety, madness of all kinds. I mean, most people view that as illness, quote unquote. Like that medical framework is so ubiquitous. And what it does, to return to your question about like, did anyone ever ask me about the circumstances of my life? Like you can't, because you either have this unfortunate bad luck with your brain chemistry and you're just, oh, it's too bad. You had the bad, genetic card and you have this chemical imbalance, or your struggle is a response to your life. It can't be both. You can't have this unfortunate disease and also be having a meaningful response to your circumstances. It's one or the other. And so the experiences that I had in the decade and a half that I was a psych patient, and I think the experiences of so many of the more than 60 million adults who are on these drugs right now and more than 6 million children, is that
wait, there's 60 million American adults and 66 million Americans total on these drugs.
According to the CDC in 2022, so those numbers could well be higher by now.
That's craziness.
Yep. And we are told that we're having a mental health crisis because so many rates of suicide are through the roof, anxiety disorder diagnoses, young people struggling, young girls struggling. We're told, this is this terrible crisis. And most people think, oh, we must not be getting enough mental health treatment. But no, if you look at the numbers, you're like, basically everyone is like almost, this huge percentage of our population, more than ever before, is getting mental health treatment. So the problem isn't not enough mental health treatment. The problem perhaps is the mental health treatment.
So I'm fixated on this. And to continue the metaphor, want to beat it to death. If you come in with a burnt hand and I don't ask you how you burned it, I'm not really treating it. I'm just giving like a palliative. So I give you painkiller because you've got a burn on your hand. But if I never say, how'd you burn your hand? Well, I put it on the stove. I do it every morning. So I think a clinician who cared about the patient would say, how about don't put your hand on the stove? Here's an alarming statistic. Only 12% of Americans are metabolically healthy. That means 88% are not. It's not a healthy country. Friend of the show and Donald Trump's Surgeon General nominee, Dr. Casey Means, is working to solve that crisis. She's got a new healthcare technology company. It's called Levels. It's got an easy-to-use app, simple and effective programs. It helps you get a clear picture of what's going on inside you. inside your body. It helps you maximize your energy, manage your weight, exercise more effectively, and it works. We've heard a ton of stories, people on our show who work here, changing their lives, getting their cholesterol under control, improving their diets, making their movement much more efficient, their exercise better. Levels membership comes with a 28-marker cardiometabolic blood test. It gives you a comprehensive view of your health and clear guidance for how to make it better. You can also get the extended panel, which gives you an even more detailed view with 100-plus biomarkers. We just received word that Levels is offering this show's listeners annual memberships with an additional 2 months free through the website levels.link/Tucker. We're not sure how long this is going to last. We recommend you take advantage of it. The address, levels.link/Tucker. Like, there was no effort to understand why you felt bad about your life.
I mean, in therapy, I would, of course, talk about my life and the circumstances of my life, but it was all, the baseline operating assumption was that I had this brain disease that I was at the mercy of, that the only thing I could do to manage it was take pills. And so any conversations that I had with therapists about my life, to me, and I think to a lot of them, just felt kind of secondary. Like, oh, you have a lot of stress, or you're in this dysfunctional relationship, or this kind of hard thing happened to you. We would talk about those things, but not because we thought that was working through those would be what helped me resolve my challenges. It was the meds that were going to do that. That was, what I learned to believe. And I think that's the insidious nature of this medicalized paradigm, is that it basically teaches you to let go of any sense of responsibility or agency over your life, because you're just at the mercy of faulty brain chemistry. And so, like, what's the point in trying to change the circumstances of my life? Because I'm still going to have this brain disease. So, like, why does it really
a disease
matter?
That they can't define, whose origin they don't even ask about, a brain disease that's, like, in no scientific sense, a disease.
Literally.
Right? I mean, is it contagious? Wow, that's even crazier than speaking of crazy, that's even crazier than I realized.
Yeah.
So, okay, so can we just go, if you don't mind?
Please, yeah.
Since there are 66 million Americans taking these drugs, can you just go through in order what those drugs are generally and what the effects on a person are?
So the different drug classes are antidepressants, of course. So you have the, Prozac, Effexor, Cymbalta, Celexa, Lexapro, the mood stabilizers, which many of which are actually anticonvulsants used for epilepsy, but they've over the decades, when they were studying them, they noticed that the animals became kind of apathetic when they were testing them for these other conditions. They're like, oh, maybe we can use this on psychiatric patients. So most mood stabilizers are actually anticonvulsants. So those would be, Lamictal, Depakote. Lithium is classed as a mood stabilizer. Yes. It's literally a neurotoxin that, it was banned in the United States until the early 70s. It didn't get approved until the early 70s for psychiatric uses and had been banned prior. So that's the other, that's considered the so-called gold standard mood stabilizer. And I could talk a lot about lithium. I have a whole chapter on it in my book because of all the drugs that I was on.
Lithium salts, it used to be called, I think. That's one of the ways it's been described. That's an old drug.
It's been around for a long time. It started to be used for psychiatric purposes first in Australia, and in the first half of the 20th century.
That's what I mean. Yeah, it's been on a long time.
Yeah, and if you actually, I do a deep dive in the chapter on it in my book, because the story to this very day that most people are given about lithium is that it is the most, it's been around the longest. It has this really reliable evidence base because of how long it's been in use for. It's the gold standard. If you actually look at the studies that got it approved decades ago, I mean, they are the most shoddy, unscientific, completely flimsy, subjective studies that you could possibly imagine. You're just shocked when and this is the case for every single psychiatric drug that is currently on the market, if you actually look at the drug label on the FDA website, so don't take my word for it, go to the FDA website, look up any psychiatric drug, go to the clinical studies section to see what trials the approval was based on. Usually it's maybe 2 studies, and of course they can do as many studies as they want, and they just throw out the ones that they don't like the outcomes of. Guess how long your average psychiatric drug trial lasts to determine safety and efficacy?
I don't know, 10 years?
6 to 8 weeks.
Wow.
Some of them last a week. Some of them last a day. Maybe 2 studies.
So these are not longitudinal, as we say.
There is zero evidence base for long-term safety and efficacy of these drugs. Zero.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. We hope you'll subscribe to it. And by the way, you can hit the little bell on there and get notifications every time we produce a video. We hope you'll do that also.